Hello and welcome back to my channel. Jacob Payton here, and today we'll be talking about Erebus by Shaun Hutson, the author of Slugs and Spawn. Got that really cool vampire looking guy sitting there. Yeah, as you can tell, this is a pretty battered copy of a paperback from Hell book. But yeah, on the back it says, Village of the Damned. Wakely was a small farming community, a mere fly speck on the map, but there was something terribly wrong there. Something wrong with the people. They were pale and gaunt. Many had abnormally long fingernails, and some had noticed an enlargement of their canine teeth. They were frightened at first, but soon came to love the darkness and hate the sunlight. They didn't want any strangers there, but they had a sudden craving for bloody raw meat, and the supply of animals was running low. There was something wrong with the town of Wakely, something that will chill you to the marrow of your bones. Yeah, this book, if you don't like B-movies, you're not going to like this book. This book is very schlocky, and it does not shy away from that. I mean, there's a mafia hitman in this British town for some reason. It does kind of dive into this reason, but I mean, that's kind of the level of pulp that we're at when we deal with this book. I will say that I enjoyed it. It did feel at times that, spoiler alert, the people turn into like these weird vampire-like creatures, and the protagonists of the book do jump to the fact they're vampires very quickly. But at times, it seems like the book can't make up its mind of what kind of vampires they are and how they behave, because at some points they behave almost like zombies, like rapid human zombies, and then other times, they're talking and doing things. So, the more, I wouldn't say eloquent, they're very 30 Days of Night, right? They're people that have turned into these things and they just want to eat other people. But even that is described as being somewhat weird, because while they do eat other people, it seems like they stop eating them once they die. So the protagonists are constantly finding chewed up bodies that are like mangled and killed in some horrible ways, because these vampires for some reason like to chop people up, which seems like a terrible way to get blood if that's what you're after. So it kind of feels a little more like the movie The Crazies mixed with 30 Days of Night than like a Dracula or something along those lines. And once again, this is more of a pulp fiction book, so if you want some hard science on how these people got turned into vampires due to stuff that's being fed to the local animals, you're gonna be out of luck. Like really out of luck. Because once again, this is a pulp book. The science doesn't have to make sense. It's just kind of fun, right? I mean, the whole premise of the book, once again, this is a spoiler alert. If you were like on the hunt to track this down and read it, might want to pause this now, because I am going to tell you the reason all these people are turning into vampires. And okay, if you're still watching this, it's because you want to know. And the reason they're all turning into vampires is because of a chemical corporation that is in this small British town that is making animal feed. The animal feed that they're making is able to make animals grow very fast, but it has also made them super aggressive. One of the other things that I kind of took away from this book, and once again, I don't know how farming works in Europe, but in America, usually stuff that is grown locally isn't eaten locally, and that goes to the animals as well, right? Like, I know I grew up in a rural area. I knew people that raised cows. I raised cows. We didn't sell ours. We ate our own. But most people who raise cows to sell them, those cows aren't being sold in the local community. They're being processed, usually in other states. So the idea that this entire town basically catches this stuff from these chemicals on eating local meat was a bit far-fetched to me. But once again, this could be completely normal in Europe, and maybe like they don't export agriculture the way the US does. I don't know. But that was my only hang up, because I was like, just because all these people are farmers in this town, it doesn't make sense that they're only selling to everyone else in this small town. Now, it would make sense that, some people did eat it. But yeah, the actual transmission of the virus, or, the disease, and why some people caught it and others didn't, wasn't really explained. But once again, that doesn't matter because this is a pulp book, and we got to read about, or if you have read it, or if you're going to read it, you get to read about vampires being shot with double-barreled shotguns by a cool farmer, and that makes it all worth it. And there's also an American journalist who had a run-in with the mob, because once again, this is a paperbacks from Hell book, and things don't have to make sense, they just have to be fun. So I was very much there for that. I also love vampires. I'll be honest, I didn't really care for the whole Chemical Corporation thing, and the finale was a little lackluster in the fact that shutting down the Chemical Corporation wouldn't have really stopped all these, like, vampire creatures that were now nesting, you know, for whatever reason, from spreading. But that kind of seemed like a way for the writer, the author, to kind of put a clean bow on it, because our vampires in this book do go from kind of staying in the location they died and hunting at night to all nesting together and making it so they're kind of a little easier to take out. Also, really great that they behaved like vampires in the movies, I guess, for the American journalist who was able to figure out what they were pretty quickly because of the way they behaved. But yeah, other than that, this book was a lot of fun. If you do find a copy, I would go ahead and read it. I mean, you don't have to look super hard for one. Like, I don't know if they're rare, but I'm just saying, like, don't go out of your way or spend a bunch of money, because while it was a fun book, it wasn't like an amazingly fun book, if that makes sense. As far as Paperbacks from Hell books goes, there are some really, really great books that I think are worth tracking down. And while this one was a lot of fun, definitely pick it up if you find it. But, you know, don't spend crazy amounts of money on eBay or anything like that if this book is super high. Once again, I paid 25 cents for this. If there's ebooks editions, I will link them, because, you know, if you can get it as a $4.99 ebook, I do think it's a fun read. And if you want to read some Paperbacks from Hell vampire books, which I've definitely been slogging through this year, I think this is a fun one, because I have always loved the idea of vampirism being spread as, like, a virus, like, kind of like The Strain. I love that series, the TV show, mostly, because I've only just started reading the books in 2023. But yeah, I enjoyed this book. I did think it was a lot of fun. Don't pay crazy amounts of money for it on the reseller market. But once again, if I can find an ebook edition, I will link it. I do want to read Slugs by Shaun Hutson, because I've actually heard that talked about by other collectors of paperbacks from horror books, paperbacks from Hell books. So I definitely want to see what that's about. And since I did quite recently read Nick Cutter's The Troop, I'm definitely in a pretty good mindset to read some more worm-like horror books, I guess. So yeah, Erebus was fun. I didn't care for any of the parts involving the Chemical Corporation and their reactions to things, and kind of like, that felt a little too over the top for me. Kind of the same way it did in The Lake, which I did a review of. The Lake was by Carl L. Sargent, and kind of same premise. Evil Chemical Corporation, or not supposedly evil, but it's like a chemical corporation that's manufacturing other things, accidentally loses this prototype in the lake, and all these fish turn into other things and people start dying. That is one thing that I have noticed in paperbacks from Hell especially, and I don't know if it was just something that was happening in all fiction at the time, but it definitely feels like 80s and 90s horror. If you find one book about a certain topic, whether it's like an evil chemical corporation, or, you know, I did a review on it too, and I can't think of what it's called right now, Sendai, which was about IVF, right? You'll find 3 to 10 others that basically have the same main premise, but different action and overall plot. And while obviously this was vampires, I do feel like there was probably, you know, I've come across The Lake, this book, and a couple others that I can't think of right now, but they're on my shelf, that the whole plot is about an evil chemical corporation or a shady chemical corporation that sets up in either small town America or small town England and accidentally somehow releases some sort of monsters on the town. So I don't really have anywhere I'm going with this. I just think it's neat, and it's something that I'm noticing while I'm reading more and more of these books. And it's something I don't think, we see as much in more modern fiction, right? Like, if vampires are popular, we get a lot of vampire books. But, in the time period that vampire books were super coming out, like Twilight and stuff, the books we got, a lot of them, I'm sure there were a lot of like Twilight clones and Anne Rice clones, but we also got like The Strain and stuff like that. So I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it's a little different. And I'm not knocking it, because obviously all stories are based on something, but I just think it's interesting. If you've noticed the same thing, or if you like these books, didn't like this book, just want to comment on some of these books. If you've read Erebus, liked it, didn't like it, let me know in the comments. And as always, before I start down another rant, I will see you guys next time.